What is up, YouTube? I'm Devon DaVinci, leader of the Renaissance Crew, and you're watching DaVinci Reacts. Today, we're going to be getting into another extra history video. This is just a one-off video. It's not like a series like the other videos I've done. The reason I'm doing this video is because it is amazing how many people don't know about this. I always assumed that this was like something that was relatively common, but to my surprise, not too long ago, this kind of became a trending thing on Twitter, and it, like, a lot of black people know about it for sure. From what I hear, a ton of people in Tulsa know about it. I believe just not even like a long time ago, but relatively recently, this became a part of their school curriculum, like something that you have to learn about. And it amazes me that it took this long for the local government to make that a thing. The truth of the matter is there are a lot of these types of events that have happened throughout American history, and I think that we should definitely look more into it, whether it's Tulsa, Oklahoma, or whether it's Rosewood, Florida, or whether it was what other? I believe there was something that happened in Harlem. I believe there was something that happened in Chicago. I believe there was something that happened in what was it? Greensboro, North Carolina, I think. Something like that. It was there's been a ton of these like race riots that have happened throughout American history where people have just been like decimated, and you don't hear anything about it. The people that committed the atrocities were never charged, were never put in front of a judge and jury. And in the events where they were put in front of a judge and jury, usually it was a case of an all-white jury completely getting them off scot-free. I've seen some cases where people will get charged with like murder and go to jail for like 15 days and then get out, and that's it. There are people that have committed murders and the very next day done interviews with magazines where they pretty much talk about how they committed the murders. And it's like, it's crazy how these things can happen. And you think like, okay, something's going to happen to them because that's how, life works. You do bad things, bad stuff happens to you. But no, they live their lives and die comfortably in their beds with their families surrounding. And that's just what the hell happens. Now, with that being said, let's jump into this and see what other information they could add on to it. And hopefully, if you don't know about this, I would be interested in seeing in the comment section your impressions of it. And if you did know about it, let me know what you thought the first time you heard about the burning of Black Wall Street and these other race riots that have pretty much destroyed a lot of different like black neighborhoods in the United States.
The Drexel Building, Tulsa, Oklahoma, May 30th, 1921. In the third-floor lobby stands 19-year-old Dick Rowland, an orphan living with an adopted family who works at the white-owned parlor down the street. He comes here to the Drexel Building to use the restroom. Tulsa is a segregated city, and he has walked down the street to the Drexel and has taken an elevator 3 floors to reach the closest colored restroom. The door opens, and on the other side stands Sarah Page, the elevator's 17-year-old operator. He must know that being alone in any capacity with a white girl is dangerous for a young black man, but he has to get back to work. Rowland steps into the elevator, not knowing that what happens next will provoke a white mob to kill over 100 people and burn his entire town to the ground. The YouTube revenue of this video will be donated to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. To help us explain this horrible episode in America's history, we've asked triple African-American Literary Award winner Stephen Van Patten to write this episode. Thanks so much, Stephen. 57 years after the United States abolished slavery, the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, was a surprisingly prosperous slice of Americana. Greenwood's population was comprised of blacks who had migrated there from the South, seeking improved conditions, but found that better life elusive. Originally, they tried to settle in Langston, Oklahoma, but were run off by racist whites before landing in Tulsa. Despite the city's strict Jim Crow-style segregation laws, Greenwood's mostly black residents played an integral part in building up their neighborhood. In fact, being isolated from their hostile white neighbors may have actually helped them build Greenwood into a prosperous district that civil rights activist and author Booker T. Washington nicknamed Black Wall Street. The state of Oklahoma, and Tulsa in particular, had done well financially, largely due to a bustling oil industry that had caused a population boom around the turn of the century and made many fortunes. That success allowed white Tulsans to hire black people from nearby Greenwood as domestics. In turn, the Greenwood blacks saved their money, invested in their communities, and started their own businesses. And with those businesses came an opulence unheard of. It's said that on Sundays, the women wore satin and diamonds, and the men wore silk and gold chains. Historian James S. Hirsch reported, teachers lived in brick houses, furnished with Louis XIV dining room sets, fine china, and Steinway pianos. It was a monument to black excellence. Dr. A.C. Jackson, considered the most skilled black surgeon in America, lived in Greenwood. There was not one, but 2 movie theaters. And there was J.B. Stratford's 54-room hotel, the largest in America owned by a black man, all the more remarkable considering Stratford had been born into slavery. This was in stark contrast to other parts of the country, where American blacks were often forced to live in harsher conditions, especially in the Midwest and South, where the sharecropping system remained in place. There, they labored tirelessly on another person's land, surrendering the majority of their crops to the landlord. As a result, they were trapped in debt to white landowners, some of whom former slave owners.
Yeah, the whole sharecropping situation was pretty much legalized slavery. Like they would give you the ability to work on their property in exchange for basic necessities, like shelter, food, things like that. And you would plant the crops and tend to the crops and stuff, but you would at the end of the crop cycle you would give the landowner most of the crops, and that was supposedly a way of paying off your bill. Like they would give you a bill for occupying their territory, and once the end of the cycle was over, you would take those crops and sell it to try to get down that bill, and whatever else you made on top of that would be profit. The problem is they made the bill so high usually that there was no way that you could pay it off. Like it was impossible. So it was intentionally built to be a way so that you were stuck in this system. And then it got to the point where you couldn't get out of it because you had so much debt you couldn't leave. So now you're pretty much stuck there and you're forced to work that land. It was legalized slavery. Yeah.
When blacks tried to improve their situation, white neighbors often responded with violence, whether individual or communal, and black men who showed ambition were often targets of lynchings.
This is a very important point too. This actually explains a lot of different race riots that's happened in America. I know this one in Rosewood in particular were both a case of a black neighborhood prospering better than the white neighborhoods around them, and then the white neighbors coming over and destroying the black towns. And I think it has something to do with more so jealousy, because both these cases, and he's going to get into the reason behind why the race riots started, but I'm going to give you just a quick explanation, not quick explanation, but I'm just going to give you a quick spoiler. The guy who got on the elevator was accused of raping the elevator attendant, and the same thing happened in Rosewood of somebody being accused of raping a white woman, and that was an excuse for the people that were already jealous of the black neighborhood to come in and destroy the black neighborhood. Just think about it. If somebody was really looking to get justice for this white woman that claims that a black guy had raped her, they would go after that one black guy, right? What is the purpose of going after women and children and buildings? And it's just funny.
But in early 1921, life was anything but bleak in Greenwood. The town had become a place of pride, hope, and opportunity. For a time, things were so good that others began to migrate there, including black veterans from World War I who were eager to start new lives in the country they had helped defend. That nickname, Black Wall Street, coupled with the success of Greenwood's black inhabitants, would feed a growing resentment among whites in the neighboring towns. By some accounts, the black residents of Greenwood had become relaxed and stopped caring about Jim Crow laws or any other trappings of white supremacy because, well, why should they? Not only were they not doing anything wrong, they had earned everything they had through hard work and smart practical investments. But that resentment was simmering when Dick Rowland stepped into the elevator in the Drexel building. Now this part gets hazy. Because there are only two people who can tell us what really happened in that elevator. All we have are rumors. Later observers pointed out that the elevator was faulty and never stopped level on the 3rd floor. They claim that Roland must have tripped and grabbed Paige to prevent a fall. Some say he stepped on her toe. Another theory even suggests that the two knew each other and something more personal was in play, though that was never proven. But what we do know is that whatever happened, Miss Paige screamed, a building employee called the police, and Roland was seen running out of the Drexel. Police pursued Roland for assault. A local paper printed a story about the incident, saying that Paige's dress was ripped, which was a common euphemism newspapers used to imply sexual assault. Details of the alleged crime swelled as the story traveled from person to person until it was so exaggerated that people said Roland had raped Paige in the elevator, and he was arrested the next day. Vigilante justice was nothing new to Oklahomans, and after Roland's arrest, a mob of armed, angry white men appeared at the courthouse with the intent to lynch him. Then, black men from Greenwood arrived to protect young Roland, 24 at first, but finally around 75, some of whom were trained World War I combat vets. And hotel owner J.B. Stradford tried to act as a peacemaker as racial slurs and threats filled the air. Then, a gunshot. Return fire. A running gun battle ensued as the black men retreated back home to Greenwood. What followed was a siege. The men who had sought to protect Roland took positions and readied themselves, but they'd soon be overwhelmed. Tulsa's white vigilantes were better armed, had them outnumbered, and now had official support from the police. Angry white men from neighboring towns quickly answered the call to arms, many of them hastily deputized by local authorities before indulging in the chaos. During the attack, the whites deployed a machine gun on a hill and fired into a church, killing the people sheltering inside. Cars filled with rioters drove through Greenwood, firing from every window. White vigilantes dragged black men out of their homes to shoot them in the street, or tie them to the back of cars and drag them through town. Mobs smashed windows and kicked in doors to loot personal items like jewelry, furs, and other valuables. And as many as 6 airplanes flew overhead, raining dynamite and accelerant on the entire area, destroying homes and workplaces, from attorneys' offices and beauty salons to hardware stores and funeral homes. This went on until the next afternoon, when the Oklahoma National Guard arrived and declared martial law. It was too late. 10,000 black people were left homeless. The official death toll was 39, but later historians would put it between 75 and 300. Among the dead was Surgeon A.C. Jackson. J.B. Stradford, by contrast, survived, though his proud hotel was nothing more than rubble. And it wasn't alone. 35 blocks had been destroyed, with over $2 million in damage and property loss, roughly $33 million in today's currency. Because local police told the National Guard that there had been a Negro uprising, 6,000 Greenwood residents were arrested and detained for a week.
And the messed up part about this is all that destroyed property and everything else. Do you think that they're going to get any type of compensation for that? Do you think they're going to be able to get back on their feet after? No. Now everything that they worked for throughout their entire lives is gone, and they have to go somewhere else and start from scratch, usually having to go to some type of ghetto or something, and now they're stuck in that lifestyle. The thing that irritates me the most about this whole situation is you hear people with this whole narrative of pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. And, well, like there are people that actually say stuff like black people are lazy and they don't try to work hard, and they put them, like they're in the situation they're in because of themselves. Like they're the ones that put themselves in the situation. But it's like to say that ignores history. Black people, we have, like, when it came to, even with the little bit that we've had, because after slavery, we were promised 40 acres and a mule as a way of like starting life all fresh. But that promise never happened. We never got anything after slavery. Like you can imagine not having any type of property whatsoever, not having any type of skills whatsoever, and then just being kicked out in the middle of the street and being forced to try to find some type of way of making ends meet, like try to find some way of making a livelihood. These people, not only did they do that, but they made a prosperous city. So it's like it's happening throughout history a bunch of times where black people have gotten together and actually pulled themselves up by the bootstraps and did the right thing. But the thing is, because of jealousy and things like that, it was taken from them. And if you constantly do this where you build something up, but then somebody comes in and kick it down and they tell you, hey, just build it up and you'll be all right. And then you build it up again and it gets kicked down. eventually you're going to like, you know what? I'm tired of building it up. Like, that's the reason why the black community finds itself in the situation that it's in now, is because we have fought a lot of time. We fought hard for a lot of stuff, and it just keeps going against it. Look at the civil rights movement. Like, people say, oh well, you know, Martin Luther King, and he did everything right, and he was peaceful, and this, that, and the other, but they ignore the fact that Martin Luther King died. Like, yeah, we definitely, you know, fought to, and we tried to do it the right way through nonviolence and this, that, and the other, but in the end, he still died, and not much has really changed. I mean, outside of like voting, which is great, and a lot of people's views on race themselves has changed, but as far as like the books are concerned and the government is concerned and things like that, there are still a lot of programs that exist that have really hurt us. And it's not even like these are things that happened like 100, 200 years ago. These are things that like the generation before me had to go through. I've talked about this before in other stuff with COINTELPRO and programs like that, where the government itself was specifically designed to stop black people from civil rights movements in particular from having any effect. Like, these are things that existed no more than 50 years ago. And people have this idea that like, oh, systematic racism is gone, it doesn't exist anymore. It absolutely still exists. Like, the systems that have been put in place that existed 50 years ago have not gone away. People talk about affirmative action and how it's an advantage for black people and it should be removed and this, that, and the other. And it's like, the affirmative action wasn't something that was designed to just boost the black community up. Affirmative action was like training wheels. It was something that was designed to help a problem that was already so rampant that the government had to step in for it. Now, in an ideal world, would it be perfect to not have to worry about something like that? Yes, but we don't live in an ideal world. In an ideal world, murder would be something that we wouldn't have to worry about prosecuting because nobody would commit any murders, but people commit murders. Yeah, it's just a lot of stuff that has happened, and there's a lot of tone deaf people out here that pretend that like racism doesn't exist, or it's overblown and it's not that big of a deal, while at the same time, these are people that don't really experience it because they're not black, or they're not Asian, or they're not Indian, or they're not Hispanic, or whatever else. Even in the white community, there was like segments, like Jewish people and Irish people and Italians and them, they were looked down upon back in the day compared to people that are from Britain. And the ironic part is, like, when you see somebody that's Irish or whatever and they are racist, it amazes me, like, wow, do you realize that like 200 years ago you would be you'd probably be slightly above me, but you would still be seen as less than. Like, you would be discriminated against too. Why, as a person that's discriminated against, would you turn around and do the exact same thing to some other group of people, knowing the pain that you went through for being discriminated against? It's the same way I feel about black people when they look down on like homosexuals or like LGBTQ in general, or when they look down on just like any race. Like, nowadays there's like this thing with black Israelites, and they have like a issue with like Jewish people, and they claim that, oh well, we're the original Jewish people or something, which, by the way, I feel is 100% bullshit. Well, first of all, I'm an atheist, so all that religious stuff makes no sense. No matter who the hell you think the chosen people are, I think you're wrong. But even if you wanted to make an argument for it, I'm pretty sure their claim is more solid. But the thing that pissed me off is like, so you're going to go around and start discriminating against Jewish people, knowing the stuff that you as a black person, or us as black people have gone through. You're going to turn around and discriminate against somebody else now? It doesn't make any sense. Now, how is it that you have been kicked and beaten in your childhood, and your idea of doing better is by turning around and kicking and beating somebody else? It makes no sense at all. But whatever. I've spoken long enough. Let's get back into it.
Upon release, many joined the rest of the homeless living in Red Cross tents. With nowhere left to go, many stayed and suffered through a brutal winter under the canvas. Greenwood had been rendered unlivable, and Tate Brady, a Klansman in the local government, thwarted any plans to rebuild. Efforts were made to relocate the disenfranchised even further away. But the displaced of Greenwood dug their heels in and took the case to the Oklahoma Supreme Court. They won, but Greenwood would never be the same. And today, much of whatever was left of Black Wall Street has been paved over as part of Interstate 244. J.B. Stratford and 20 others were wrongly accused of instigating the riots. But other than that, there were surprisingly few charges brought up on anyone. Stratford jumped bail and later became a successful lawyer in Chicago, and the Tulsa police chief was relieved of duty. But neither he nor the rioters saw a day of jail time. Yet perhaps the most startling part of the story is what happened to Dick Rowland. Sarah Page left town after the massacre, leaving written instructions not to press charges. And upon release, Rowland left Tulsa and never came back. Both disappeared from the pages of history. We don't know where they went or what became of them. They were gone, like Greenwood. On a personal note, I find it incredibly distressing that this incident and others like it were not more widely taught in U.S. schools. It's hard to imagine how we're supposed to progress as a society if we can't own up to our transgressions and recognize wounds that need healing.
That
Because
damn
while this
music
is a
cue.
terrible story, it's also a necessary story, one that
It
we
kinda
cannot
spooked me for a
afford to
second.
forget.
Oh hell.
Legendary thanks to Ahmed Z.
Oh man, I was like, wait, what the hell is that? Yeah, that's another thing that irritates the hell out of me when people try to pretend like, well, you know, if you just forget about it and move forward, then we can come together. The more you talk about it, the more you divide us, and you shouldn't talk about things like this because all it does is make people mad. No, trying to forget about it is what makes people mad. When you pretend like nothing happened or it wasn't a big deal, that's what makes people mad. The sooner you like learn about it and can approach it from a empathetic standpoint, like I know what you're going through. Well, not even I know what you're going through, but I've studied it and I can only imagine what you're going through, and something like that. Okay, then we can come to an understanding. Even if you want to make some type of common ground, because like I mentioned earlier with like the Irish, for example, they had a lot of hardships they went through also. So it's like, okay, I know what you guys are going through. We went through something similar in our country, and this is what happened, and so we understand absolutely everything you're going through, and you know we got your back. That's what I would like to see more of. When more people are able to take accountability for stuff and can move forward. I mentioned something about this in the Rwandan Geography Now video that I did. The more we have people like take accountability for what happened in the past, the more enlightened the populace is. Like when you try to brush stuff under the rug or try to pretend like it's not that big of a deal, eventually when someone does learn about it or when it's brought forth in front of them, then they're like, it comes off as unreal. It's something that they don't relate to, so they just brush it off. It's not that big of a deal. This is nothing. If I didn't learn about it, then it must not have been that important. Like that's what it comes off as. You need to take all these lessons and try to learn them, try to boost them up as much as possible. And at the same time, it's like learning about this isn't something that's like a call to action to make people outraged or upset or anything like that. If anything, it should just open your eyes to like learning what has been going on behind the scenes that you didn't know about, and how you can help make this country better by not doing or not making sure it never has to go through something similar to that again. Like, for example, learning about the things that have happened in Ireland and the things that happened in Germany and the things that happened in all these other countries, as a black person, it helped me understand that there are different parts in history where atrocities have happened. It hasn't just been black people. It's happened to a bunch of other people as well. And it gives me common ground. Like, okay, I understand you guys went through this too, and you got, so I know what you, so we're in the same boat, kind of like we understand what we're going through. Like, it didn't make like, it never made me worry like, oh man, we got to stop teaching about these things, otherwise the Jewish people are going to get upset and want to overthrow us, or else the Armenians or the Irish, they're going to want to overthrow. No, that never happened. Even like, well, this is kind of tough because I've already said, as a Black American, you don't really have a lot of connection to Africa because the connection was pretty much severed. I have no idea where my original country was, or at least where my family's original country, like where they originate from. But if I did learn what country I came from and I discovered they did some atrocities in their past, I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, well, we shouldn't learn about that because I don't want them people to be mad at me or something. No, like, the thing is, we understand that you never did anything. Like, you as a person living today probably didn't do anything, or probably don't have any type of connection with the atrocities that happened back then. So us learning about it isn't going to make us go after you specifically. Now, it'll probably make us go after the government. They have some explaining to do for why they did this and nobody was ever held accountable. That's usually something that would be done through court cases and legislation, the traditional ways. We're not going to like try to overthrow the damn government because of that, but there are ways that the government can claim accountability. I mean, I know like with the Japanese people, they I believe they issued a formal apology for the internment camp situation in World War II. But the thing is, when it comes to like the African slave trade in America, I don't believe there was ever any type of accountability on America's part. Like, to this day, they have never apologized. They've never made good on their promise of 40 acres and a mule. They've never they've constantly done things, as a matter of fact, to go against apologizing, whether it was through Jim Crow, the erection of the Confederate monuments, which, by the way, a lot of those monuments, people like to think that they're historical and they were made during the Civil War. But no, they weren't. They were made during the moments in American history where black, not unrest, but black civil unrest were at their peaks. So the turn of the century, right around the 1910s, the 1920s, a lot of those statues were erected in the 1950s and 60s during the Civil Rights Movement. That's when a lot of those statues were erected. They were designed to try to intimidate black people and make them pretty much to erect symbols of white supremacy throughout the country. That's what they were designed for. They weren't made during the Civil War or after the Civil War to commemorate generals or whatever else. That wasn't the case. Same thing with the flag. A lot of people like to talk about how the Confederate flag isn't the same flag that was like the official Confederate States of America flag. I believe it was like some type of battle flag for Virginia or something. But that's the thing, that flag that we normally see, the Stars and Bars flag, it was, again, something that was popularized during the Civil Rights Movement as a form of intimidation against black people. So its purpose was never to fully represent like the Confederate States or rebellion or whatever else. It was designed to intimidate. Now, some people took the flag and tried to turn it into something that was a little bit more positive than that. So, there are some people that actually had that flag, and I believe that deep down in their hearts, they really see it as a sign of rebellion, not a sign of white supremacy. Like, I'm willing to guarantee the Dukes of Hazzard was using that flag as a sign of rebellion. I'm willing to guarantee that Leonard Skinner was using that flag as a sign of rebellion, not about white supremacy. I'm willing to make a compromise on that. I'm pretty sure you guys took it as a sign of rebellion. But the thing is, for me, it's the same thing as the N-word. Why would you want to take this symbol that was made for hatred and supremacy and try to turn it into something positive. Like I said, the same thing with N-word. It's not like this was something that had value before it was changed into something negative. It's something that started off negative, it's always had negative, and now you want to change it into something positive. Even though we already have things that already exist that you can use in place of it that has the same meaning. Like, why do you have to take the N-word and try to change it into something positive? I don't get why. Like, I just don't understand what the point of it is. Like, you could take a symbol like the swastika, for example. The swastika, before the Nazis made it into like represent the modern meaning of it, it had a positive meaning before that. So if you wanted to make an argument for turning the swastika into something positive, I can see how you can make an argument for it. I won't necessarily agree with it, but I can see how you can make an argument for it. It was something that existed for thousands of years before the Nazis came, and it had a positive meaning, so I can understand that. But the N-word, Confederate flag, these are things that were designed from day one to be horrible signs. And changing them into something positive, all it does is lead to confusion. It only leads to confusion. Because as soon as the wrong set of people start using that word, even if they try to mean it in the new meaning of the word, it's still going to come off as negative. If it's the N-word, yeah, you and your friends, if you're black, you can go around using it and you think that it makes it cool and you don't have a problem with it. But as soon as somebody white says it, or somebody says it that has a little bit too much of a southern twang to them, and you hear too much of the R at the end, or if they put an R at the end of it or whatever the hell else, then there's going to be a damn problem. Same with the Confederate flag. You can sit there and wave it around and try to pretend it's a rebel symbol all the hell you want. But as soon as some people with some hoods come through talking about we just mean this to be rebel, there's going to be a goddamn issue. So I think as far as the N-word is concerned, we should completely get rid of it, because my original argument for not using it was all the people claiming to change the meaning of the word. Would you go up to somebody that had to go through back when that word actually meant something vile? Would you go up to them and use that word as a term of endearment? If you had a chance to meet Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or whatever else, would you walk up to him and be like, hey, what's up, my nigga? What do you think their reaction to it would be? And then try to explain to them, oh, well, we changed it. It's now a term of endearment. See what they got to say about that. I don't think they'd be too impressed with your redefining of the word. So I think we should get rid of it completely. There are other terms of endearment you can use in place of the word and have the exact same meaning. And the same thing with the Confederate flag statue. If you want to have a Southern flag that represents Southern pride, somebody can design a flag to represent that. You can make something that represents just that, and it doesn't have the same connotations as the Confederate flag does. You don't have to have all the racial baggage of the original Confederate flag or the one that became popular, whatever. The fact of the matter is, when you see a Confederate flag, no matter what design it is, you know what it usually represents. Get rid of all of it. Leave it in a museum or whatever the hell else. You don't have to completely destroy it, but put it in the place that it needs to be put, in some type of archive as a part of American history, but leave it there. Don't try to glorify it. Don't try to wave it around or whatever the hell else. Make a new design with a new flag and let that be a representation of Southern pride, of rebellion, like something like that. That's fine. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share. I look forward to seeing you guys in the future videos. I love videos like this because it is something that I can add a lot to and something that I do like to talk about and get off my chest. So if you want to go in the comment section and let me know what you think, then feel free to do it. I will be monitoring the comment section for things that are a bit too crazy. And just a heads up, I don't play as far as the bullshit games are concerned. Like, I know, for example, there's a thing with conservatives trying to push all the racial problems on modern Democrats. And while the modern Democratic Party isn't necessarily an ally to black people, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's the same thing as it was with the Dixiecrats. That's not going to fly. So if you come over here saying things like, oh, well, the Democrats created the KKK and they supported slavery, which is true, by the way, leave it at that. Don't come over here and trying to make some type of connotation for why any current political party members are a part of that. It's just going to lead to either an argument or a flat out removal of the comment. Like I said, if you want to talk about the history, that's fine. If you want to mention Democrats starting the KKK, that's fine, because that's a fact. But just know that there's asterisks to that, as well as other things as well. Just like how Republicans were the party that did in fact fight for the freedom of slaves and for desegregation early on. But with that being said, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm Devon DaVinci. Hopefully you have been enlightened. I'm going to give you guys the deuces, and I look forward to seeing you on a future video. But until then, I'm signing out. Deuces.